So if we wanted to do multiplayer, if we wanted to do something totally new, we can't really do that at the same time as making a game really fast. To make a game fast, we have to stay in our wheelhouse, right? And so I do still want to stay in this camp for like a couple of more games.
Yeah.
And also
don't push the tech. We're trying to push our design skills basically to do better on the marketing side.
Yeah. Hey everybody, welcome to episode 584 of Coffee with Butterscotch, the weekly podcast for indie game developers. I'm Seth and I'm tired.
I'm Adam and I am wired.
I'm Sam and I'm the artist.
And we are Butterscotch Shenanigans. Today is August 3rd, 2020 quick. So we are 4 days, almost exactly 4 days post How Many Dudes launch. And we've got some numbers to talk about how the launch went, how we're feeling, and also just a bit about what was it like emotionally, because that was a lot of what we talked about in the last episode of kind of how to keep your head on straight, what kinds of things will be popping up that will kind of maybe derail you. So it was an interesting weekend. Sam compiled all the numbers, and so I'm just going to kick it over to Sam to go through the launch of How Many Dudes after 4 days.
Here we go. This is basically 96 hours out because we launched at 11 a.m. on Thursday morning.
Eastern time.
Yeah. So we launched with 307,000 wish lists. So you notice there's like a 20K gap there, I think, between what we talked about just before the launch. And a lot of that was the personal calendar kind of just kept on pumping up. And then we popped into that popular upcoming tier. So essentially getting some of this additional featuring stuff happening. And we're capping out around 8,000 wishlists per day for the last 2 days before launch.
Yeah. It was kind of interesting compared to the past was before the personal calendar, because we launched Crashlands 2 last April. So Crashlands 2, about 2 weeks prior to launch, saw it was maybe like a tripling of its wish lists. It was maybe chilling in like the 400s per day for a couple of weeks. And then literally just the day before launch, it shot up.
Yeah, it was like 4,000 wish lists, I think.
Yeah,
the day before
so
launch.
the personal calendar has kind of changed that, where now it's a couple weeks before launch. We get a much higher bump, and then that bump sustains. And so we didn't have a massive spike the day before launch because, the personal calendar had already been exposing the game much better in those couple of weeks. So
yeah, so personal calendar, net huge win for all indies.
Great job, Steam.
Love it.
Yeah.
So here's some of the sales numbers then. So the first 24 hours, we sold 64,575 units, which is insane. And we actually crossed 100,000 sales after just 50 hours of the game being out.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
If you're doing the math on that, it looks like this. Because it, the curve goes down because you're always going to get that initial big spike of people who were anticipating the game or whatever, and then the sales definitely will decrease over time. Right? So,
and with all that allowed us we briefly cracked the top 10, like the global top 10. We were outselling Marvel Rivals there for a hot second, which was
for just a moment
weird. A brief, beautiful morning. But
hilariously, Valve has put the Steam Deck, the Steam Machine, and the Steam Controller in the top sellers list.
Yeah, I was thinking more about that. I was like, that's kind of fucked, Valve.
Yeah,
like, what are you doing?
It's like there's 10 slots in there, but actually there's only 7 slots because those 3 pieces of hardware are just always occupying spots in the top sellers.
Which is Counter-Strike.
Counter-Strike makes sense.
Which is
a video game.
It
That's
does.
fine.
It's a game, so I mean, it deserves to be there. Fine, right? But it is like it's a Valve game. It's probably literally always on the top of that chart.
Oh yeah, if you look at like the SteamDB, you could see how many weeks something's been on the chart.
Yeah, it's always there.
Yeah, it's just literally.
So
maybe
there's essentially
just put a
6
dedicated widget on Steam.
Exactly. Just get that out of there.
Yeah.
Not really.
So there's essentially 6 slots available for the top sellers list.
Yeah. So we made it. We made it in there.
We were in there.
Yeah,
which is
in
crazy.
The top 6.
And yeah, it's so as far as like where we're at. Yeah, we're at 137,000 sales right now, which is again insane. That's and also 1,300 reviews with a 92% positive score. So people are loving the thing, selling like hotcakes. And I thought one of the funny kind of comparison points, because of course all this is, we're trying to understand this from our own studio's context, right? So like, given the games we've sold in the past, how well is this one doing relative to those versus, of course,
Oh God.
just its ability to make up its own ROI. So we were calculating, because I think halfway through day 2, it outsold Levelhead's entire lifetime, within basically 36 hours.
Levelhead's been out for 6 years, and
Actually, I think it was the first 20 hours, just like that. It outsold Levelhead.
yeah, and we've done
like
daily-
we talked about in the past with Levelhead. Levelhead, we have not been able to sell directly to players ever, but it did pay for itself via other means through Xbox Game Pass and Google Play Pass and other stuff. But from a direct sales standpoint, especially on Steam, just
Absolutely not.
not even
it
close.
just didn't go.
And then, when we launched Crashlands 2, we were very hyped because our biggest success for Crashlands 2 was from Steam, right? And we talked about how the mobile markets have shifted so much between now and then that Steam was our focus, and we successfully did way outsell the original game. So Crashlands 2 sold more Steam units in its first week than Crashlands 1 did in its first year. But how many dudes outsold Crashlands 2's first year in less than 3 days? In terms of number of units, right?
All different price points, so it's a little, you got to
The math is all over the place.
Different price points
money.
and
different
Crashlands.
costs.
Yeah.
Crashlands 2 was the dramatic weight of Crashlands 2 sales were in China.
Yes.
It was about
Crashlands-
75% China.
Yeah, Crashlands 1, year 1, it was only in English, right? And
Mhm.
so it's really
and made most of its money on mobile.
and made most of its money
Yeah,
on mobile.
exactly.
Yeah. So,
All
like,
of it's
so a lot has changed in 10 years, right? So it's
Well, so, I mean, this is just looking at the Steam unit comparison.
yeah, it's
stuff, right?
interesting, but it's hard to say. Like nothing means
Well, this is also part of our commitment to try to get games out faster. If we can get out a game a year, give or take, then that gives us much better frame of reference. Because, if we launched Crashlands 2 a year ago, that's an easier comparison point to launching How Many Dudes Now versus the original Crashlands 10 years ago.
Yeah, they're totally different markets,
It's just
right?
a different ecosystem. So
Yeah. So that's all. In other words, biggest success our studio has ever had, hands down, without a doubt.
we did it.
And
We did it,
yeah, we did
boys.
And the highest peak concurrent player count we've ever achieved too. So we had 9,818 simultaneous players, right, from on the Steam side. Which also, again, is just crazy. There's I think it's 60,000 daily active users or something by the second day, just in terms of just the volume of people playing thing. It's just cool shit. And
our concurrent player graph is weird looking because we just targeted the 8 most popular languages on Steam to start with, and we graphed it out with our telemetry on the back end to try to figure out what are the time of day effects, and we have basically we just have 8 different curves of people speaking different languages that are all just offset a little bit. And so
it's basically offset by time zone, right?
So it's as one group of players, as French speakers go to bed, the next group wakes up and they start playing, and then the next group, and so we have these weird little micro dips in our concurrent player count, but it doesn't if you go to SteamDB, you can see concurrent player graphs. You can see the kind of games that are very regional, where either they only have one language, or they are just the most popular in a specific region. They have sort of a sawtooth, sort of a
really
shape.
a really intense.
Yeah, where once a day they just shoot up to a peak and then they just fall off a cliff.
Yeah, and
they
you'll
have,
when we do look at our own analytics, when it's broken down by language, you see this that extremely dramatic within language peak
we
to
do see
trough,
those,
where it looks like a spike and then a rapid collapse and then a bottom spike and then it comes back up, right? And it basically just gets averaged out as if you're internationalized as a game, as you're averaging out all the different time zones, right? But it's fun because you can see if you look at any game that's in Chinese and English, which is most games these days, then you'll see a 9 a.m. ish to Central Time in the U.S. You'll see a 9 a.m. spike and a 9 p.m. spike, and the 9 a.m. spike is China, and the 9 p.m. spike is United States. And then if you see the gaps kind of filled in the middle, then that means you got decent coverage of Europe, basically, right? But the two main spikes are those ones, and you can actually see relative popularity between the U.S. and China for any given game by looking at the relative height of those peaks, right? And
Yeah.
it differs by game, which is just kind of fun to go look through and be like, oh, this game's doing like particularly well in China for some reason, right?
Yeah, we're trying to figure out like where's the last place that we can like based on this time, essentially time graphs. Which country do we need to somehow target so can we somehow
Can we
get like a
flatten it
flat
out?
line?
Yeah.
You know,
How do we flatten it?
Yeah, but
the
the answer
Australia,
is
I think, is the last one.
there's a
that
lot
we
of
could-
time that's just in the ocean, you know?
That's the problem.
So-
That
Yeah.
Pacific Ocean will kill you.
Oh
every
yeah, I
time.
love seeing those images from space or through Google Earth or whatever of view of the Earth from the Pacific Ocean side, where it is just only
It's just the ocean.
I think you got like Hawaii just kind of hanging out there.
Yep.
Yeah, there's just not a lot of population there to make up the difference.
So yeah, that's been really cool. And that first couple of days was interesting because of that graph where it's like it shot up over the course of the first day and a half, and then it literally was almost flat for like most of Saturday, I think, or maybe it was Friday afternoon, Saturday.
It was Friday, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it was, which is just we were looking at. We're like,
It almost looked like we were botting or something
Yeah,
like that
yeah.
because it was like no dips, no spikes, just completely flat.
Well, and we had just
for
been
like
looking
8
because we were
hours.
spending so much time looking at the SteamDB charts.
Yeah.
you got it. Yeah.
Okay, so we're looking at all these other games, and there were a few we were like, there was one that was absolutely botting for sure.
Oh yeah, literally bought it because it was the exact same number.
Yeah, just like definitely for sure. But then there are other ones where it just looks suspicious because it didn't follow the normal regional kind of by time zone peak.
Yeah,
kind of
and
behavior.
you'll be able to tell because either they will have a perfectly linear player growth where like every minute they'll add 100 players, and that'll happen for just a specific amount of time until they'll hit like exactly 10,000 players, and then suddenly they just completely stop gaining players. And then they'll just stay at exactly 10,000.
Yeah.
And then at some point they turn off the bot farm, and then
And then
they're
it collapses.
down
It's
to
a
like
line.
8. Like they
Yeah.
just suddenly they lose all their players. So there's a lot of
or you see
weird.
other weird patterns. But it was funny because once ours got extremely flat, then I was like, okay, maybe there are fewer people botting than I thought because this is such an unexpected
Right.
curve, And it was funny because once we look at our own analytics and break it down by language, then it's not flat at all. It's varying a lot by language and by
It just
time
all
zone.
washes out.
It all washes out, but somehow it just happened to wash out to a flat,
Just perfectly flat.
line in such a way that it was a little spooky because I was like, how did this all add up? All this random chaos,
just the luck
all
of the
that
draw.
to a flat
It's pretty
line.
awesome. We had we also did have just a lot of YouTuber coverage, which is great. We talked about that last episode because we had a bunch that had already kind of been happening leading up to the launch, right? Since the embargo was about a week before. A bunch of really good Twitch coverage, streamer coverage too. So I think our peak was around like 7,000 or so. And that was like Saturday and yesterday as well. So very good coverage, kind of end to end. Actually ended up got a review, which is hard to do these days, frankly.
Yeah.
So Destructoid gave a review, gave it 8 out of 10. I thought the review's pretty spot on in terms of their like kind of how they were conceptualizing the thing, which is great. So all good in that regard. And yeah, players just seem to be really loving the thing. I think the only other weirder or just like interesting little data detail from it was that usually our experience when we launch a game is that you come in with X number of wish lists, you launch, and because launch is also visibility wise, like the biggest visibility you get for your game. Yeah, it was. Then you would typically end up with more wish lists post launch, right? Than you had pre launch because it's just like so many people seeing the game for the very first time.
Yeah, they'll be like, I'll wait for reviews. I'll wait for a sale.
Right.
So
what's been interesting with MAD is we're adding a lot of wish lists per day, but are converting just a way larger amount than normal. So we're still down from the launch day itself by a little bit.
Or the first time we've done that.
Yeah, or we're flat on terms of total wish lists. We're at like 303,000, I think, right now. So it's just like about 5K under.
And this was strategically the goal. I mean, it is like that's basically flat, right? But again, weirdly flat. But that was the goal. Of the whole thing was basically to position the game such that it was cheap enough at launch because with that steep launch discount, and that if somebody thought they wanted it, it wouldn't make sense to be like, oh, let me just wait. That seems to have worked.
Yeah, I think that strategy worked really well, and we also saw because of that strategy, we got our price point, under $10, and so there were multiple, screenshots we have that we've put in our little historical capsule where it's like the feature image is how many dudes, like in the games under $10 section is how many dudes, and the popular new releases basically it's featured like 3 or 4 times on that front page, right? So in terms of just how much visibility we get from Steam, there has been really, really good.
We couldn't have gotten more visibility, right?
I think the only way we could have is if we launched on Friday.
Yes.
And if we were the most popular game to launch on Friday. Because basically what happens is there's the...
Or the last one to launch, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because there's the popular new releases list, which is essentially chronological, but also it's like it filters out games that aren't selling that well. So it'll, if you're in the... Because hundreds of games are launching a day or whatever, right? So if your game is selling well, then it'll show up in the popular new releases list, but that list is chronological. So if you come out on a Thursday and then 20 games come out on Friday and all of those games are, doing really well, then you'll be off the list, right? So we were still on the list. I think it was a top 10 that it shows.
Top 10, yeah.
Yeah, so we were still on the list over the weekend. We were pushed down close to the bottom of that list just because chronologically.
I think we fell off it briefly on Friday. And then, because again, it's basically just, it's very heavily weighted to chronological, right? So over the weekend, then I think we crept back up into it. Like we fell off for a little bit and then crept back.
Well, and it's like it's velocity based. It seems to be, right. So like if some new games launch on Friday, and then of course, like we were just saying, when your game first releases, that's when you get the biggest spike in sales because of all these people being psyched about the game. So you're going to have great velocity of sales in those first few hours, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of churn for the new release category.
Correct.
For the moment they release, because you get those.
Most games are only on there for 2 or 3 days max, right?
Yeah,
because it's supposed to be a chronological churn of stuff, right?
Yeah. So we had that, and then kind of the same thing goes with the top sellers list, which is it's very velocity driven. It seems, as in like how many sales per hour or per day, or maybe some weighted combination, right? So you can kind of like you can be in the top 10 sellers on Steam. In the world or in a region or whatever. But that's just because you just launched, and like, if you're going up, like we said, we bumped up above Marvel Rivals, but like, that was never a threat to them.
Oh no. That's a temporary effect of the launch. That's not,
because it's like our best day ever is just like a random Thursday for them. And so, like we have no illusion, but it's still like, we're still taking screenshots of that shit and being like, like eat it, Marvel.
It's the same deal, which we're probably into. It's the same deal on mobile, right? Because we also got to the top of the charts on mobile, right?
Yep.
And so we're like on Google Play, we're only behind Minecraft.
Yeah, we're the number 1 top paid strategy game.
But also just the number 2 top paid.
And the number 2 top paid game.
And but only we're the number 3 top paid game, right? But we have no, because like the things we're sandwiched in between have so many more sales than we do.
Well, we were noticing because like of the for example, and the mobile charts are so static. They're just incredibly static. Yeah. So if you go to the top paid charts on Google Play, on the day that we were on there, there were out of this. So of the top 7 games there, 5 of them were at least 7 years old, and the other 2 were How Many Dudes in Balatro. And so like there's no real churn on mobile, so you'll be able to kind of like pop into that spot briefly, and then you'll just slide right back out unless you have an absolutely insane breakout hit. So,
it's essentially the same on Steam too. Right? Like those your best bet, your biggest, wildest hope for an indie launch is just briefly appearing in one of those top 10 lists, right? Briefly, before you get crushed back out.
Those few people who look at it during that little window, then they.
Well, and also if you think about like Minecraft being number 1, it's like like Microsoft bought Minecraft for $2 billion, and like they're gonna do whatever it takes in terms of ad spend and whatever else to keep it at that number 1.
But they also don't need to. It's the most popular game ever made.
That's fine.
I don't think they have to do anything. I think Minecraft would sit up there for the rest of time without anybody even.
But the idea that that you could just make a really good game and then unseat, like as a small indie team, and unseat Minecraft and then stay above Minecraft. Give me a break.
There's never gonna.
To your point, it probably just makes some sense for the stores to like just make dedicated widgets for some of these things, as opposed to being
just put if a game sits at number 1,
if a game sits at number 1 for 10 years, You know,
Just
it's kind of like when people
fucking-
talk about like, hey, once you've made like $1 billion, you know, then it's like you get a 99% tax rate from that point forward, and like a badge that says like, hey, you won capitalism, like you're done. No, it's like we're good. You don't need to.
Everybody knows.
Yeah.
But yeah, so again, biggest success we've ever had, and we don't know exactly what the year one ROI is going to be, but we're doing some forecasting today to kind of get ballpark figures for it, which you typically can do after. You can try to do after the first day, but you also do it the first week, and then of course after the first month.
Because basically, what to think about, there's sort of like 3 possible paths that a game could take, which is one is you get that big spike immediately, and then your sales just kind of just go straight down,
Which is the typical.
which is pretty typical, yeah.
That's what we experienced with Crashlands 2 as well.
Yeah.
So just for context, like within essentially a week to 14 days, but within 14 days, I was looking at that this morning, the game essentially hit whatever its steady state was going to be, and that was like, like 150, 200 units a day.
Yeah, but it was also really close to that, like 24 hours later, right after like it was
as close to that point quite yet, but like it was basically within like 3 or 4 days. Yeah, it kind of the difference between the peak and within 4 days was crazy.
So you kind of think about it like
it's
it's the idea of a tail, right? So it's like you could have like a very shallow tail where it's like you made almost all your money right off the bat, and then everything after that is just kind of very supplemental. And at that point, you basically need to take that initial batch of money as a studio and stretch it out. Like that's what you're gonna live on. It reminds me of like that Tim Robinson sketch of the woman who sued the city because she got sewed into the pants of the Charlie Brown, and she's like, you don't need to worry about it. But she's like, she's like, I have a certain amount of money, and that's all the money I have until I die. It's just that amount of money, and that's it. Right? So,
that is what it feels like.
Yeah.
And then actually, that is an important misconception both for new indie devs and also for players, right? When they're because we put out an announcement like, hey, we sold 100,000 units, and that sounds like so many, and it is so many.
It's like, all right, now let's take 30% away, pay taxes on it, divide it amongst 8 people, and spread it out over 3 years. Right? Yeah. It's like, oh shit.
Yeah, shit. It goes away so fast.
Yeah. And part of it too is how long did it take you to get it, right? So we had a 10-month dev cycle for how many dudes. And so the costs were much lower this time around.
Yeah.
But then the next question, so that's the first possibility is that you get that one big spike of money and then just a teeny tiny trickle, The next possibility is that you land kind of somewhere in the middle where you do still have those like, pretty rapidly declining sales, but that the tail ends up settling in a much more comfortable place. Yeah.
Which is more kind of like what Crashlands 1 did. Like Crashlands 1 still has a low tail, but it's just maintained that tail
for 10 years.
And
basically like every game will have some kind of a tail if it had an initial sort of a
even Levelhead has one. It's just trash.
It's just very low.
And so the question, the challenging part then is knowing what the tail is going to be, because the reality is that as that tail gets fatter, your projections, if you're using a projection based on the spike of like how the launch goes, your projections get more and more off, right? Because the reality is that like 300 days of selling 500 units a day is an insane amount of sales versus selling 100 units a day.
Well, I think
right?
a good kind of anchor point then is kind of like, so we went back and looked at Crashlands 2, and it's like Crashlands 2 made half of its money in the first week.
Yeah.
And the other half.
Or half of its year 1 money in the first year.
Yeah. And so it took another 51 weeks for it to make the same amount of money as it did in the first week. And so it's like, well, if that tail is much fatter, right, then you might end up making 5 times as much money in the first year as you made in the first week. You just, you have no way of
the difference between 2x and 5x.
Is a lot.
Yeah.
So you just, at this point, we have no idea, right? We have no idea what this is going to look like.
But what we do know is that the game's already paid for itself with Steam revenue alone.
Yep. Yeah. Basically, by the end of this week, it'll pay for itself.
Yeah.
So we know that the ROI is going to be 1 at least, right? Obviously, the question is how much more?
How thick will the tail be?
Yeah. So again, that's the fastest we've had from a direct selling units thing. Where it's Seth mentioned this before we started recording, but it's like since 10 years ago, since Crashlands 1, this is the first game we've had that basically without any external deals in place.
So we had no business deals at all. So we didn't like with Crashlands 2, we worked with Netflix, with Levelhead, we worked with Google Play, and with Xbox, and with How Many Dudes, we decided, and we did have some opportunities that came up, but we just decided to say we need to figure this shit out. Like we need to be able to market and launch our own games, and generate the players ourselves. Because there's also some. I don't know if you guys feel this, but to me personally, like there's a different psychology to it, where if you have an external investment come in, and then that like maybe on day one you're already breaking even because you've got things covered, then it does change the amount of obviously changes the amount of pressure on you of like what it means to market the game. If you're like, this game has to get players, it absolutely has to. It has to succeed, and not just players, a lot of players. Like we need to go all out and figure this shit out. So we kind of purposely put ourselves into that situation with this, so that we would be forced to figure out things like YouTube Shorts and all that stuff. And so I'm feeling really good.
What is also, given how
great.
everything went, like the numbers that we're seeing, but the visibility and how much coverage we got and all that kind of stuff, right? It's hard to imagine how it could have gone better, right? Because it feels like what we kind of did is we saturated what the game could do, which is ultimately the goal, right? Is you get a game that can be successful to some extent, and then you, through your marketing and through luck, you basically saturate how well, or max out how well it can do. And it's just hard for me to imagine like what else could have happened.
There's only one or two things that I could point out, and the reason is because we're using like comparative titles that have launched recently and looking at how their launch trajectories went. Yeah, what managed to happen for them.
Right, yeah, because their games that did much better than ours did, but we don't know if it's because of how they did their marketing or other kinds of things, or if it's because of the games themselves.
What the game is,
yeah. And so, like a good example, there's Everything is Crab and Recoin, which are ones that we're kind of looking at as far as how their launches went, how many dudes compares to those concurrent players, sales trajectories, whatever else, because they were likewise transparent. They had these posts like, Everything's Crab's like 48 hours later, they're like, 100,000 units. Recoin first day was like 100,000 units, So it's like, okay, we have some of this trajectory information then from these other games to see kind of how are we stacking up. And the only major difference that I could see as far as marketing efforts was down to basically streamers on day one.
Yeah. So even looking at the top charts on like SteamDB and stuff, looking at their Twitch streamer numbers, like we were on the low end for the games.
Very low end. Yeah. So both of them had like over 16 to 20,000 concurrent live. But some big streamer picked them up at some point, if not two. Versus
should we have waited and not done streamers before launch? Should we have tried to?
No, the reality is we haven't gotten a streamer that big.
Yeah, we've gotten big YouTubers.
Yeah, we've gotten very big YouTubers.
Yeah. But a lot of that stuff kind of came out over the week prior to launch, right? And so
all of our big YouTuber coverage came out the week before. Yeah, basically.
Yeah. Was that a mistake?
No, there's still a bunch this week. I think the biggest videos did come out a week before, like Dangerously Funny and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
But we're still getting some new videos that are doing very well, like literally yesterday, And so, that is one of those questions I have, which is, okay, I haven't gone to look yet, but basically figuring out when did they do their media embargo lift, right? Was it day before? So like much tighter, or was it a week earlier? Like basically, are we a little...
Yeah, and we talked about this a couple episodes ago. We were talking about the timeline for release and like the logic of it, and we talked about exactly this question of when does the embargo lift? Because the earlier it is, then the more opportunities there are for things to happen before you launch, right? And because we're thinking back to like when we launched our demo, we put the demo out, and it pretty quickly started to build up steam, but it took like 2 weeks before it
2 full weeks,
and when it peaked, it really, really peaked, right? And so. The idea there is like, if that's the kind of dynamic we're expecting, then we want that peak to happen at launch, right?
Yeah.
But the longer time you wait, the more likely it is that the peak happens before launch. And basically what we saw with the launch was that the peak happened when we lifted the embargo, right?
Well, the peak, I'd say the peak in terms of which most popular YouTube videos.
Yes.
It's true. But in terms of streamers, it actually has been Saturday and Sunday, the last 2 days where we've had the most concurrence.
Yeah.
So again, we're like, I don't know if that could possibly account for the massive difference in terms of the like sales difference that we're probably going to see between like us and something Everything's Crab or else. I know it probably accounts for the currency difference, right? Because what we've seen typically is if you get a really, really big streamer to play your game, you'll get a noticeable spike of like, I think we had like 1,000 concurrent player jump when I think like Lyric or Moist Critical or someone played it back in during the demo.
Yeah, I do wonder too if that's different between, because we can see that in the demo. Like there's like anytime there's a YouTube video goes up, a streamer goes up, there's a big spike in the demo.
That's true.
I don't know. I'm not sure if there are in actual sales, since that's that threshold.
Yeah, we can't. It doesn't seem like we can see exactly when these things are going live in the back end versus how they don't seem to line up with sales 100%.
Yeah,
they probably do with Wishlists though, I'd imagine.
Yeah, probably.
But I go with that. So
yeah, that's part of the idea too, right? It's like it's part of the logic of it is to say like we just need a peak to happen, and the more proximal it is to launch, the better for launch because that keeps us on the top of all the charts. We already were on the top of all the charts, right? It wouldn't have helped us be higher on Steam in a way that would have mattered, right? Which means that aspect of it I don't think hurt us, right? In terms of like catching all the Steam levers we were trying to catch.
But I think to your point, Adam, it's just all about, did we do the best we could do with what the game is?
Yeah. That's the question. Yeah. Or is are we missing like something? Did, but it does feel like we did. It does feel like we did, but I'm also like, I have questions.
Oh yeah, sure. Right? Yeah.
Because
and we should hypothesize about like, because it can be either that the game itself just has, and again, like we know this is true because like Levelhead clearly has a limit, right? Like a very low limit. And any game is going to have like some kind of a built-in limit of just how successful it can be because of what the game is, right? And so it's not reasonable really to expect like, oh yeah, if we just marketed it better, then it would be better. That is also true though, right? You can't disentangle.
Yeah, you don't know what the limit is.
Yeah, so we actually need to hypothesize about both as we lead into the next project, which is what are the reasons that we think, both from a marketing standpoint and for what the game is standpoint, that, and we're just guessing, right? But like, what are the things that we think could explain the gap between like how we did versus how well everything is crap.
Other games,
whatever. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and again, it's not to say that we're not happy with how it's gone, because again, it's the gap between our own games and this one, it's gone better than all of them. So,
and also importantly though, we're still only 4 days out from launch, so kind of to what I was saying earlier, like we don't actually know what the curve is going to look like. For the first month.
Well, my expectation with this game has always been that it's and we'll find out, but that it's a game that requires social proof to really take off, and therefore, or not even take off, to be like really successful, and therefore is a game that could grow over time into its market rather than take all of its market right out of the gate. Right.
Basically, it might have a fatter tail.
Yeah, it might have a much fatter tail and be more spread out rather than be like, and we see games like this where they're for whatever reason they're a harder sell up front, but as more people play it, they bring more people into it, and also there are games that are combo. I think Blatcher is a good example of a combo where if you look at its graph, like it launched to large numbers, but then also has a really fat tail. Right.
Yep. And people just play it and they talk about it.
And they talk about it. And if anybody who's played Blatcher, you've told your friends about Blatcher and you've talked about how you can't stop playing Blatcher, right? That game spread so effectively by word of mouth, but that kind of marketing is long tail marketing that doesn't give you those spikes and stuff.
Yeah. And 4 days in, you have no idea whether that's coming or not. Right?
There's no way to know.
Let's talk about mobile a little bit.
Well, so this is the flip side of the coin. So as we talk about with Crashlands 2, the mobile market, since we launched some of our other premium games years ago, has largely cratered in terms of premium game sales. So mobile, I would say, remains not very good at selling premium games, to the surprise of no one.
Not very good. I would frame it as very bad. That's how I would frame it.
It's very bad. So we got featuring on all the things. So on the Apple side and the Google side. We reached number 2 paid game on Android and number 1 strategy game on Android. So only Minecraft is above us in terms of paid games on Android. And then
at least it was. I don't know if that's still the case, but
I guess I could look right now.
Still is. I think I looked this morning. And we briefly we're up to like number 3 paid game on iOS. I think maybe on Saturday or something like that. I think we're now more like number 7. So we've fallen down that list a little bit. But importantly, combined mobile unit sales are like 1/11th Steam unit sales.
Yeah, so you take Apple sales, you take Google sales, put them together. Then you have to multiply that by 11 to get our Steam unit sales. And importantly, it's like I was saying on Steam, we just barely peeked into the top sellers for just a moment. right?
Yep.
And that was with selling essentially 20 times what we're selling on any one of the mobile platforms.
Yeah. Yep.
But on the mobile platforms, that puts us at number two or number three.
Yeah.
And we're still there, right? So
And
that should give you a sense of like, and this is the top of the paid charts on mobile, which kind of gives you a sense that, and this is something we've felt for a long time, and I think we probably talked about that the mobile stores have essentially just trained people to refuse to pay for games.
Also, just even beyond that, I think have trained people to not engage with the stores. They don't people go to the stores
do
less.
buy, like, because you can look at some of the games in the top charts. So we talked about this in the past too. You know, you can like look at Balatro or any of the paid games that really took off, right? And they have lots of sales. Like, it's possible to have lots of sales, right? But that's not driven by the store. They have lots of sales despite the store's best efforts to not sell any games. Right?
Yes, these are not mobile first premium games.
Yeah.
Is the important.
They basically become
they
become a cultural phenomenon. Then they come to mobile, and then they take over the top charts on mobile.
And so the other interesting note here is that we are in Play Pass. It will be turning over today. Like, the store page for Play Pass turns over and should be featuring How Many Dudes in a big way, supposedly.
And Play Pass is the reason that we have How Many Dudes on mobile, right? Because
yes, and it's also it counts as paid game revenue. I think it's really important. Yeah, it counts as paid game revenue.
So if Play Pass is generating a lot of revenue for us, then we would be in the top paid charts, even though people may not actually even be buying the game.
Correct.
But our rationale with Play Pass was that with Crashlands 2, which we launched into Play Pass and is on mobile, right? We saw the same thing, which was a tiny fraction of our sales are coming from mobile, but Play Pass actually made up a significant amount of revenue. Still much smaller than Steam, but a meaningful amount.
Yeah, a meaningful amount. Yeah.
And especially the tail, like, it just kind of keeps going, right? Mm-hmm. But Crashlands 2 was designed as a Steam game. You know, it's a PC game first, and so it doesn't fit as well on mobile, especially for something like Play Pass, where Play Pass pays out by play time, right?
Yes.
And how often people come back. And Crashlands 2, like any large scale RPG, right, is a game that you play and try to finish. You play
a lot once, you know?
Yeah, you play it a lot once over a relatively short period of time. And so our rationale was seeing how Many Dudes was shaping up and the kind of game that it was and how we were already playing it. We were like, okay, well, this is the thing that basically it fits Play Pass perfectly. So it's basically our final test, is ask the question, if this game can't generate revenue and we didn't expect it to generate revenue in mobile through direct sales. No. But if it can't generate a lot of revenue through Play Pass, then we don't think we can. We don't think it's possible. And then mobile kind of just goes off the table.
Also, we're not in Apple Arcade because we're not allowed.
Yes.
So
we were not invited to Apple Arcade.
Yeah, because we'll basically need to wait some time to see how the game performs as just a straight up premium game on the arcade side or on the Apple side before we can pitch them to see about maybe including it. But yeah, it's like we don't know then what the Play Pass revenue will be, and we have no visibility into it. So Play Pass revenue updates on the back end once per month at the end of the month.
Yeah. Which also makes sense because the way that they do it is they basically compute across all the games. They do some weird algorithmic stuff to decide what the share of revenue is that goes to every game and stuff. So they just do that periodically. But yes, but you can see nothing going to that. I mean, we have our own analytics, so we can see how many players are on Android, right?
What proportion of players do we have on Android versus Steam? Do you remember?
Yeah, right now we have. I just had it pulled up. Or I guess cumulative total. So it's been increasing. But cumulative total right now is 32% Android. 58%, what would you call it? 30% Android, 60% Steam, and 7% iOS. Okay. And there's a Steam Deck gap and some rounding, but so it's but when we first launched, then Android and iOS both were sitting at about 5-ish%.
And it took until the next day for us to be entered back into the Play Pass catalog. Yeah. Right. Or to enter in there.
It was the evening of the launch day. It was when we actually entered Play Pass at all. And then we haven't gotten any Play Pass featuring and stuff because that happens today or starts happening today. Whatever that means and turns into, we don't know. But yeah.
Yep. So basically it's with our position with How Many Dudes it was kind of our last test of mobile, to be honest with you, if it was going to be worthwhile for any future games we do, to see what happens there. We still just won't know for a while. And again, that could have a very big effect on this whole idea of the ROI of the game, right? Or what that burn rate looks like.
Yeah, because if you got to basically compile and support 3 times the number of deployments, because it's instead of being on Steam, it's on Steam, Android, and iOS, so it's 3 builds instead of 1. As well as all the overhead that comes with managing those backends and keeping up with their OS updates and everything else, to get like a 10% increase in sales, right? Or in revenue. At that point, but better off just focusing on just make a really good PC game and then move on, right?
Yep.
But yeah, and again, like we talked about too, it's like, especially once you're supporting languages, like once you can support 2 languages, you can support an arbitrary number until you bring it like right to left in or something, right? Then, and each language only adds a few percent. After you basically got English and Chinese are enormous. Everything else just a handful of percent.
Couple
right?
percent. Yeah.
But the cost of adding like 5 more languages compared to the cost of supporting a new platform, right?
Yeah. And once you've got the translation, you've got it. You don't need to like
you got it. You
keep updating it or whatever like you have to do with an iOS build or
and it's got kind of
build,
like a fixed cost, right? Because it's basically like 15 cents per word per language, kind of ish, right? And if you have a game that doesn't have that many words, like how many dudes has 18,000 words, so it costs like whatever, we'll call it just $2,500 to add a language, right? And
at the scale that we're operating at now, it could be worth it to add another couple languages.
Yeah, we could add like 4 more languages for the cost of supporting, one platform, right?
Yep.
But again, it's a fixed cost. Like it's
fixed cost.
You're
exactly.
done after you do it. And all those things go to fatten the tail, right? Like if you have more languages, then players from other regions can now play the game and they couldn't before, which is essentially, if you think about, adding a new platform is just opening up the game to a new market that it couldn't get into
exactly
before. Languages work the same way, but they're much cheaper in the long term. Right? So,
so I think that's kind of where we're sitting then, which is again, most successful launch we've had. Very excited about it. It's been great. Player feedback has also been just phenomenal. There's not been like a particular obvious thing that like as a new feature we needed to add, or like some big hole we missed. You know what I
mean? That's been interesting.
Yeah.
Where when we've launched any of our previous games, over the first few days, there would kind of like bubble up to the surface through all the different reviews and Discord comments and Reddit threads and whatever, like just community talking about the game. There would be some clear subset of things that we needed to do, like some kind of a feature that people really wanted, some kind of consistent issues, UI, UX problems, whatever. How many dudes has not had that? Like, and we've had way, way more community activity with how many dudes than
more
with
players.
Way more players. And
we've had very weird edge case things happen to small numbers.
Yeah, there's a lot of there's edge case hardware things, which is just going to happen. Like at one point we had somebody with a super low end Android phone where the font would only render a few of the letters.
It looked like a fucking, I don't know, it was like a...
So it's like there was just...
wet ink on a newspaper.
I didn't even know that was a thing that could happen.
There was just no VRAM available on the device to have both like the textures of the sprites of the characters and stuff in the game and store the characters for the font. And so the font had to go. So you just can't read anything.
But it's weird that it didn't like crash. It just didn't render.
It just didn't do it.
Yep.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was allowed.
I don't know either. Yeah, I've never seen that before. So we have these kinds of weird edge things where there's not really a whole lot that we can do about it. I mean, we can sort of like talk to our engine developers and say, hey, do you guys have any like ideas on this? But that kind of stuff is a bit out of our control. But other than those kinds of weird things, there's not a clear path. There's not like we really like, here's our bullet point list of like, here's the big problems of the game that we need to fix.
Yeah. For Crescents too, it was like, it was so many frequent complaints about certain aspects that were in Crashlands 1, but not in Crashlands 2.
So within a couple of days, we had an obvious like first update ready to go in terms of like, here's the bullet list. Let's just get these things in. With how many dudes we can just go, all right, what are we feeling? What do we want to do? And even weirder is like, there hasn't been a lot of people requesting new dudes.
No,
there's been like
they want to add their own dudes. that's a common request, right? But,
Yeah.
but no one's just like, there's not enough dudes here, or it's,
Yeah.
Yep.
A few people ask for leaderboards. A few people will throw out like an idea for a dude.
but it's like they're having fun. They're not like, this is missing.
They're not like the
Yes,
game is bad because it doesn't have X. They're just like, it would be cool if X.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's the most like I would say like fully complete feeling thing that we've produced, if that makes sense, from a player basis perspective. Yeah, every time we launch something, we think it's done, but there's always a gap.
Yeah.
But from a player base perspective, I think it's the first one we've done. It seems like we matched what people would sort of expect and the things that they would want the most.
And I'll say, like for me personally, the launch of this game has actually been like emotionally kind of complicated.
Well, so let's get into that. Yeah, I think there's a couple questions to ask about like how we're feeling about this, right? So one is just what's been the emotional arc for you over since launch day? That's kind of my curious point.
So I kind of killed myself to make this game. Like I have now like 670 hours of how many dudes logged on my tablet since December. So that's excluding time working on how many dudes during the work week and all of that.
Except for just playing it like every night, every weekend.
Yeah, like I stopped raiding with my WoW guild because I needed more time to play how many dudes. And so like I just went all in on making this game. And then even just like a few weeks ago when we sent the game off to be localized, so we had string lock, where we're basically done with the game at that point. And there's this kind of vacuum of like, like it has that feeling of crossing the finish line of a marathon where it's like you did something big and you're really proud of it, but you're not in good shape. Just kind of like mentally. And so I'm super proud of the thing and it did super well, but then suddenly having that big vacuum where, like I said, with previous games, there was an obvious next step.
Yeah.
And with how many dudes, there isn't one. And it's just like, I was just kind of like over the weekend, just kind of hanging out in the Discord and just watching people just having a great time playing the game, having a blast. And I guess in a way, it's maybe like how a parent feels when they send their kid off to college. You know,
empty nest.
Yeah, where you're like, I did my job, and I'm not part of this anymore.
I get that. Yeah.
And so that was weird. Like I was just kind of like I had like a mini depression, I guess, maybe over the weekend, where I just kind of like,
basically, it was postpartum. You did postpartum.
Yeah. And so, I'm excited to do whatever comes next with the game, but I don't know how major that's going to be, just because it does really feel like the game is great. It feels complete, and anything we do from this point forward will just be kind of like just a cool thing just to throw in there just as like a final hurrah before we move on to the next game.
I think, there's not a sense that we have to do something.
Yeah, we don't have to. We can just do whatever. So that's been interesting. And we've gotten good enough at launching games where like even back in the Levelhead days when we started figuring out DevOps and stuff, where we can launch a game and then we just kind of we'll throw out a hot fix or two if there's any sort of like consistent kind of a thing. But generally there's nothing urgent that needs to happen in terms of like a big emergencies. And so, we'll launch on a Thursday. We kind of watch the numbers Thursday, Friday, talk about maybe what that means. And then we all scatter for the weekend and just kind of enjoy the weekend. Right. And so, that kind of like frenzy of activity for me leading up to content lock, and then kind of like getting this thing shipped and then just having that big vacuum. It's been very challenging.
I think it's also because I suspect it's coupled with the thing that I was also feeling, which is so my relationship with the game has a lot more distance because I don't make the game, right? I do various other stuff in the studio. And so my relationship with the game is mostly about like how well is it doing, how good of a job did the team do, building it, and what does it mean for the future of the studio, right? And all, but the details of like what the game is are a lot more disconnected. But that launch part. So for me, it's all about like, what does this mean for the studio, and how did it do? And also, like, we just spent a year working on this thing, right? That sense of like we did something big, and then there's a moment where it goes out. And I think for me, the one that was the weirdest about this launch in particular was because this was, I would say, our smoothest launch yet. Still, like from every detail, just like the smoothest launch yet. And then also the biggest launch. And I didn't know what to expect from a like, what's managing the Discord going to look like? What is like, how much given if the volume goes way up, then even if we did a better job than ever of QA, how many things slip through the cracks once you're operating at scale, right? And so I was expecting there to be like fires to put out, and I was expecting there to be what felt like noise and chaos, either from like a community management standpoint or from a bug management standpoint or whatever. And part of it is like we didn't hit, because there's still like in theory like a 10x scale we could have hit with the level of success we got, right? And maybe at that point that's when those things start to become a problem. But even with like the most successful launch we've ever had, it was just so chill.
Mm-hmm. That everybody's just having a good time, and there was
everyone's having a good time.
Yeah.
It's all fine, and nobody needed to be doing anything.
Well, you're sort of forced to sit with your thoughts in this context, which is
that's what I'm saying. Like there was it's the idle hands problem, right? We're just like,
I think it's the combo of that. Of like you have to sit with your thoughts and be like, what's next? And there's not an obvious thing next, right? But it's also it just is so anticlimactic, and we talked about that with hitting the buttons to launch the game. Right?
Yeah, I think I'm going to put a short together. I did record the like launch hour for us where we were hitting all these buttons and stuff.
Yeah.
I think I'll put some kind of short together that kind of shows that process, because it's the comedy of just how
nothing is
a big nothing burger.
But because I think it's because there's such a remove between us and the thing that we made, and then the success of it via players interacting with it, right?
Yes.
There's so much distance there that it all becomes extremely abstract, right? And so we're looking at charts where we're like, holy crap, there's like yesterday when we hit our last peak concurrent players, there were, like we said, almost 10,000 people playing it at the same time, right? Yeah. Do you know what that experience is like for me? I'm just looking at a chart.
You're just looking at a fucking chart.
Just looking at a chart.
Yeah, we were joking about how, what was it, like 20,000 people can be seated in Madison Square Garden or something like that.
For a concert.
Yeah, so it's like we in terms of unit sales on Steam on the first day, we sold out 3 Taylor Swift concerts basically worth of people, but we're all just kind of in our houses.
Going about our day.
Just going about our day. Like we don't get to experience that in any kind of a collective or big way. We hit publish, we look at the charts.
Yeah, and I think to me it's that postpartum thing of like we release the thing, it's done, but we spent all this time working on it, putting all our eggs in this basket. We're so worried about what the outcome is going to be, and then we release it, and then the outcome is fine. It's good, right?
Good.
Which means there's nothing. There's no emergencies. There's no like with Crescents 2, like everything was fine, but also we knew we had to pivot, right? So. And we're feeling lots of other kinds of emotions about like having worked on a project for so long and like all this other kind of stuff that gave us stuff to focus on and think about and worry about, right?
I mean, we felt like we needed to do 3 major content updates for Crescents 2 to really kind of like deliver on the things that played. Like, and we kind of joked back then about how like we had to go on the warpath to get that game into like a better received state, and it did work actually. It's at like 93% positive now on
it's been creeping up
on Steam on English. And so but like with how many dudes, it's already at about that review score. So again, it's like it's just going fine. So what the fuck do we do?
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I think it's I know I spent a lot of my time on like Friday night and Saturday looking at the numbers to try to get a sense of what the tail was going to feel like, contrasting it with like what Crash 2 was looking like, where the kind of, at what point in time post-launch did it kind of hit some steady state where it was more consistent for a month or two. Because similarly, it's like we've all experienced the launch bolus of attention and like the cash that comes out of launching a game at this point, having done this for 14 years. But that has never meant anything to us because we've always just had to survive off of it for like as long as possible.
Yeah, because it didn't fundamentally change. It wasn't like, hey, we all have $10 million and now we can never.
Exactly.
It's like, yeah, we still got to make a next game, and that game has to do well too, right?
Yes.
Which is where we're landing with Howdy Dudes also, right? Is we're still
basically almost always land there, but I think the difference in that tail is what makes the difference in. I think for me personally, like how much I feel a sense of relief having launched the game.
Yeah.
Right, I am already relieved massively in the sense of like that it has already done well, it's done well beyond anything that we've done before. But I think the question mark as far as what to do next is in some ways dependent on what that tail looks like. Which, of course, in this case, I think it's very true to note that we cannot know for basically probably like 6 weeks or something like that, right? Maybe even longer.
Well, because also the game is on a steep sale at launch, which we also haven't done. So that changes the shape of. It's like once the sales go away, once we're out of the launch week, does it plummet at that point? And
when it's now just at full price and it's not on any of the charts. It's not in
we just
like
is it that we basically moved because like with Crashens 2, like Sam said, half of our year one revenue came after week one, right? And that's through a series of sales and all this kind of stuff where we're converting wish lists and doing all this kind of stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if we already converted all of our wish lists because we're already on sale, right? Is it like, did we just move all of that to the first 2 weeks?
Did we front load it, with just a weirder way?
We don't know.
Yeah, it's like, you don't know. But I think it's, my wife was joking. She was like, are you good? She's like, so kind of confused because it seems like it's the best thing that's happened, but I'm just checking in. And I was like, well, I still have a lot of questions, and so unfortunately, I don't feel like I can rest very well.
I do think the parent sending your kid off to college analogy is probably the one because it's like you don't know what's going to happen. You just know that you know that there's this next phase. Right. It's largely out of your hands. Like from this point forward, there's not really much you can do about it. It's just going to go off and do its own thing, right?
Yeah, I was like, I have both feelings simultaneously, which is that I'm extremely proud of what we made, and I'm very happy with how it's been received. I'm very proud of how the launch process went and how all this has unfolded, and it's insane. And at the same time, because I don't know what it means for the next year, then I am anxious about it, right? I have both those things put together.
Well, because I'm
trying to do a good job of separating them at certain times, right, to like properly celebrate this fact,
Yeah, and at this point, it's looking like will definitely be paying for itself. Definitely. How much more than that? Because if all we do is we have games that pay for themselves, then we're always an inch away from a game not paying for itself, and then that's the end, right? And so a game needs to do better than pay for itself because it has to pay for the next failed game or games, right?
And that's assuming that we don't grow in any way, right? Because if a game
more money,
if a game more than pays for itself, and then we add a couple people to the studio. We only got 7 people full time right now. So if we add a couple people, then now our expenses go up by 30%.
All this is just circling around the fact that it's very anxiety inducing to think about how to fund a game studio with like 8 people in it for years at a time. You know what I mean? Like it's just it's always
it's just that games are fraught because you never know how they're going to do. Right?
Yeah,
it's the success of one game tells you nothing about the next game.
Well, and even if the plan is all right, well, on to the next game. Well, what is it? Because then you've got the blank slate problem of trying to find what the next game is.
What is it and how how much risk is associated with that game, right? Because if this game basically just pays for itself, the one we just launched, then a lot rides on the next game. A lot. It has to succeed, basically, right? If this game pays for itself plus 2 years of runway.
I think given typical forecasting methods, it is likely that How Many Dudes will have an ROI between 2 and 4x.
Yeah.
Right. Based on just on Steam.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I'm like, okay, that's mentally, great. I'm like, great. I can kind of park that there and I can use that when we're talking about what we're doing next and thinking about stuff. Right. And I think that's the biggest success we've had then. Right.
Yep.
In any case, and that's the most safety we can have. And I think then,
but that means that gives us another 2 to 4 years of making games. And if we can't keep kicking out that runway with the next games that we release, then at some point the still is all over.
It runs out.
You're still like kind of a little.
But that's just the life we live, right? That's how, if you're, and this is, I think, the non-romantic side of being a full-time game developer is, in a way, it's kind of like living on lottery tickets. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where like, people always talk about like the big hits, you know, the Stardew Valley. It's like this one guy just grind away at this thing for 5 years, and then still to this day, it's like the top selling game on so many different platforms. And it's like that's a 1 in a million, right? And like the most common scenario, if you actually manage to make a living off of it, is one where you're just kind of jumping from game to game and living off those tails and just hoping that the next one doesn't do so badly that you're done.
But I think, I do want to say, because I think this has too much of a negative angle to it, given where we're at. You know what I mean? Like, I think the reality is we have now achieved an escape velocity out of that with how many dudes.
Yeah, well, yeah, we've bought ourselves a lot of time.
Yeah.
But it's easy to squander it, right? So like,
100%. Yeah, I'm saying, don't worry about that fact. I think this is what I'm talking about. Is like, it is very hard for us because we've been doing this for a long time, and the overall strategy of the studio is survival oriented, right? Because it's a small indie studio.
We're always hedging. You know?
It's hard to just say we have a very large success on our hands, and it's great. And to stop the sentence there, you know what I mean?
I don't think we have to stop the sentence. It's just that both things can be true, right?
No, I know both things are true. I'm just saying, like, but the 4 days after launch, one thing is true. The other things aren't true. You know what I mean? It's like the other things.
We don't know what's happening next.
Yeah, we don't know what's happening. Yeah. But it's, we're not seeing any signals that say like, hey, we don't have to worry about whether or not we can launch a successful game for a decade. You know? Yeah, we don't. The uncertainty is an uncertainty of like, oh yeah, there's a good chance that like
it's the uncertainty of being in this industry. I think.
Yeah, exactly. It's that what, and we talked about this in the episode about like the emotional experience of leading into a launch, and about the looking at the kinds of outcomes you can get, right? And this is exactly what we talked about, right? Which is there are basically bands of outcomes where one is you don't even break even. Now you're in a rough spot, right? The most unlikely one, but best one, is the game does so well you never have to worry again, right? Mm-hmm. And then you've got everything in between, which is the game did well enough that you could
maybe got to worry a little bit,
or make the next few, and that's actually one of the, and this is literally what we're describing. Is it's actually in a lot of ways the most fraught one, because there's not an obvious next step. You don't have a reason to feel bad, and you don't feel bad, right?
Well, you shouldn't feel bad. Yeah, I think that's what I'm trying to get. It's not framing it as a bad thing. I think
that's what I'm saying. No one is framing it as a bad thing.
Yeah, it's not accurate.
Yeah, and no one's framing it that way. It's very clearly a good thing.
You're just saying because you have options now.
You've got options now,
you can have a sense of squandering it or fucking it up.
It's not squandering. It's just that we haven't reached escape velocity in the fact that it's like, hey, we figured it out. We launched a game. We don't have to worry. Like we didn't, right? Which again, that's an unlikely thing that almost never happens. It's not anything that we were expecting to happen, right? Yeah. But in games, it can happen. There's a possibility there, and so every time we don't hit that possibility, and the same way you buy a lottery ticket, you're not going to win. You never win the lottery, right? Yep. But every time you lose a lottery,
until you scratch off the numbers, you might
have exactly. and it just there's like a little bit of a. There's a little bit of a depressive like moment of being like,
maybe next time.
Yeah, exactly. The thing that was really never going to happen didn't happen, but I was kind of.
I think it's why again, when we framed our expectations for both internally and then for the studio, as far as like what are we trying to sell on launch day, where it's like this is a good number, right? This is a great, like we're above all those margins.
Oh yeah, we blew past all of it.
Yeah, way above. Yeah,
again,
which is why that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, like, everything is great and everything's looking up. We've got like the next few years are going to be great.
Oh yeah,
right. Yeah. But we're still working. We're still working developers, making video games for a living.
You're not buying the yacht. Yeah. You're not Gabe. We're not
buying the shipyard that makes yachts and then having a submarine fleet.
I get you.
Yeah.
Well, I get the other question I had with this is like, so given that this was the first game that we made in this like very different approach, how are you guys feeling about that fact and that approach? You know what I mean?
I feel good about this. The just for context for listeners, the previous game was a 4.5-year project with 6 months of post-launch updates. that's expensive as hell. It puts
Mhm.
so much pressure on the game succeeding. And I think there's a weird thing that happens to your mind, like when you give yourself that much time to work on something, that nothing really needs to happen at any given time, as long as it all happens by the time you're done. And so
Hmm.
there's a sense of overwhelm that I got when working on Crashlands 2 that I never really got with How Many Dudes.
Makes sense.
Where like How Many Dudes was the approach was do a game jam and try to come up with a fun concept that is appealing and marketable right off the hop. So in the first 4 days of development, have something that we can like make a web build of, and that people will have fun streaming, and that it feels like a real game experience, right? And then everything after that is just taking it one step at a time, play the game, and be like, what would be fun to do next, and just keep layering in new game systems, and always just going one step at a time, without saying like, here's our big mega plan of all the different game systems that need to exist and all the different interactions and whatever. And because of that, it was just super, super fun to work on all the time. And so, I mentioned how I spent hundreds and hundreds of hours playing the game. I didn't do that because I felt like I had to. I did it because I was just having a lot of fun with it,
Yeah.
And when you're having fun with the game, playing it, and when you're having fun working on the game, I think the game's just gonna be fun. And so I feel like that kind of shows itself in the end product. And I do want to, try to hit that approach again, which is like come up with a concept, see if we can get it up and running in 4 days. If it's not fun at that point, then let's see what else we can do, maybe.
Or even just do that a couple times.
Yeah, make a few different games, and don't commit to any one of them.
Yeah,
and this is part of
4 games. I don't know.
If we bought ourselves some extra time, then that gives us a little bit of extra room to explore. Yeah, and I think something that's always a worry though is like if you're on that short of a dev cycle, it means you're operating in the exploit side of things as opposed to the explore side of things. Because if you want to move really fast, then if you go, well, we want to like develop this new tech or switch to 3D or that kind of thing, basically something where you're just operating way outside of your stuff. Yeah. So if we wanted to do multiplayer, if we wanted to do something totally new, we can't really do that at the same time as making a game really fast. To make a game fast, we have to stay in our wheelhouse, right? And so I do still want to stay in this camp for like a couple of more games.
Yeah.
And also
don't push the tech. We're trying to push our design skills basically to do better on the marketing side.
Yeah. Our ability to, which again ultimately is what we have to do is make and sell. It's the selling games part that matters to do this for a living, right?
Because it's like if we can do 2 more games, with this style of development, that'll be, this one was about a year, right? So a couple more years, that's still only 60% of the dev time of Crashlands 2, right? And that's 3 whole games, right?
And if we can, as Sam said, we're right now, it's like, okay, for something on the order of like this game has an ROI of 2 to 4x or whatever, right? Which again, we think about this in terms of years and next games, right? If we're gonna make games on a year-long schedule, right? Then with the runway we already had from Crashlands 2, plus the runway now we're getting from How Many Dudes, then we have at least 2 more tries to make sure we can at least kick out the runway more, right?
Yep.
But that means we have to be able to, we have to have enough time to take those 2 tries to do it, right? But if we can do that, if each one of those does the same, if we spend a year and it kicks out the runway by
2 to 4 years.
2 to 4 years, right? We only have to do that a few times before we're looking at a decade of like.
I know we got a lot of time to do weird stuff.
We got a lot of time.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. And so I think this thing is if you can get those positive ROIs on a tight timetable, right? Then that stuff actually adds up really fast.
Because each of the
Oh, yeah.
tails stacks, you know?
Yeah, it's tail stack.
But it also means that then if one of them doesn't do that, if one of them only pays for half of itself, right, or whatever, right?
Yeah. You've only burned a year on it. And
Yeah, we've only
You know.
burned half a year on it, and we still have all these things, right? So by having these faster projects, then we get the opportunity. We're truly playing the proper risk mitigation game, right? And we talked about this a long time ago on the podcast about the idea of like anti-fragility, right? And like the different kinds of ways you can try to run a business, where one is you can try to be like, oh, I want to get to as stable a point as possible where I've got an input and an output. I know what both of those are. They're dependable and so on, right?
Sort of manufacturing style, basically.
Manufacturing, right?
Yeah.
Versus entertainment, which is gambling. You make a thing, who knows how it's going to do, right? And ideally what you do in games, because as an entertainment medium, is you find a way to get the floor brought up via stability mechanisms while still being able to play the gambling game of like, maybe we get a blockbuster, you know? And to me, this approach is what lets us do that because it mitigates enough risk and ensures that what we're really figuring out is the thing that matters most, which is how do we sell games, right? Because we have more opportunities to try. So to me, this makes the most sense. And from just like a software standpoint, working on a new project with a known scope of like a year is just infinitely more fun and freeing than working on a software project for 2 years, 4 years, right?
Yep.
And so
the bigger it is, the harder it is to work on. It's just like
it just becomes
mentally.
Everything becomes a slog as it grows, right?
Well, we were laughing last week about how, you know, if we want to add a new trinket or something to how many dudes, then that amounts to a sprite because we need the icon. We just talk through what we want it to do, and then typically, you know, it would be maybe like a half hour of programming and testing, and we've got a trinket. And then it just starts showing up in the game, and people can enjoy it right off the bat, you know. And with Crashlands 2, it's like, okay, if we want to add a trinket, which is just trinkets in Crashlands 2, there's just a myriad of questions of where does this show up? What has the player seen at that point? Is it part of an equipment set? Are there quests involved? Is it crafted? If it's crafted, what's it made out of? Therefore, what does it look like? And then weaving it into the progression map and figuring out, you know, does the acquisition of this trinket lead to something else? You know, because there's story elements. And so just like adding one thing to Crashlands 2 actually meant adding 20 things. And it's 20 hours instead of 30 minutes, right? And so I don't want to go back to that for a while. Oh, that's hard as hell.
Yeah, but it's also, but it also gives you because the R&D part, because like you mentioned, when you're in the exploit phase of development, it's really focused on speed. Then it feels like you can't really do R&D, right? But that's true the longer a project goes on, right? Because at the beginning, it's kind of all R&D anyway, right? And as a project goes on, the cost of changing things dramatically or trying new stuff goes up and up and up and up. And so by doing stuff more often, even though we might not want to go really far afield for R&D because we're trying to do things fast, you can still get weird. You know, you can still, you could like, so because I even felt this with when I built the howmanydudes.com website. Part of why I built that was because I was so anxious about the launch. I couldn't concentrate on like the big.
You just needed something to do with your hands.
I just needed something to do, you know, and I knew that it would be also just worthwhile from a learning standpoint to be able to make a whole ass website.
Yeah, go stand up a website a week.
Yeah, because most of the things that I do is like with this LudoKit project I've been working on since almost a year ago, right? And then Rumpus and you know all these various projects is I work on them forever. A small number of projects that I work on forever, right?
And they're just ongoing. Like their services.
There's ongoing, and they have like there are many problems they have in common. And each time I do a new project and hit that common problem, I'll like solve it a little better each time, right? But I'm still constrained. But like over time, once that solution is in there, and if I realize a better way, I can't really do anything about that. Yep. Or I just don't have the opportunity to realize a better way. But when I sit down with a brand new blank canvas, and it's like, what would it mean to do this well, right? not having to deal with legacy. It's just like, I got what I need. I can do this well right now. And I think that's a lot of what we also buy by having short projects
games faster.
at a time is when we're kicking off that project, we get to make those early decisions about how, yeah, we do have this legacy system, sure. But I'm starting from scratch, right? I could just
you can do whatever you want.
I could do whatever. I could take the parts that I learned from that, make something new, and I think that part is very valuable too. And I think just the longer you work on a project, I think the less. It's obviously the higher the investment, so the worse the ROI keeps getting, right? Unless all those investments turn into a higher return, right? But they usually don't. And the more also your learning investment has a decreased return.
Yeah. And I've been working on that so we started kind of setting up like a template project for the next game. So, which basically just means go through the entire code base of how many dudes, rip out all the stuff that's specific to how many dudes, take some of the things that we had to invent, like new concepts or whatever, to support how many dudes, and then figure out how do we kind of repackage that into something we can reuse in the next game. And so it's also the case that even just like you're saying, Adam, over the course of development, you will just kind of naturally do some R&D that you can carry forward and kind of turn that into tools. So as far as what we do next, we'll probably end up doing something with how many dudes. I mean, some kind of an update. What that is, we don't know yet.
We'll figure out this week, and then we'll kind of see how this next month and some change shapes out, and that'll continue to inform what we're doing, for the next couple of months.
Yeah.
Very good launch, best we've had. What a thrill,
Yeah.
What a fucking thrill.
Excited, and then we'll have some more updates through the podcast as time goes on about where things are settling and as our forward plans start to crystallize. But at the moment, we're just tired but satisfied. So that's all the time we have for this week's episode. We'd like to thank our producers Fat Bard and Sampa DeCosta for putting the podcast together, and thanks to our community moderators who keep our Discord running. To get more involved in the Butterscotch community, just go to podcast.bscotch.net, where we have links to the Discord, a way for you to donate to support the podcast, and links to the archives. And of course, if you haven't yet, head on over to Steam, Google Play, or the App Store and pick up How Many Dudes, because if you haven't caught on from this episode, it's out. And if you have been playing How Many Dudes and you're enjoying it, we really appreciate leaving a review on the platform of your choice. That just always is helpful, and we appreciate that. So thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Goodbye.
Bye.